One of the things the evangelical church tells you is to tell your child that I love you unconditionally, but I don't like this area in your life. It's sin. And you're basically telling that child the essence of who they are is an abomination to God.
Hi there, and welcome to I Changed My Mind. I'm Brooke Sebold, and I created this series to model what the changing mind looks like. Because in this climate, I believe we urgently need to normalize transformation. And if there's one thing this series keeps teaching me, it's that change isn't just about a single moment. It's about the courage it takes to unlearn what we once believed to be true. This episode is one of 5 we're producing in partnership with PFLAG National, the largest organization in the U.S. dedicated to supporting, educating, and advocating for LGBTQ+ people and those who love them. Today's story is one of the most sweeping transformations we've encountered. Sue was a conservative evangelical and longtime Republican. She homeschooled her 3 kids and taught other parents to do the same. Her children were raised on conservative Christian media and steeped in traditional values she believed were right. So when her youngest, Styx, came out first as gay, then as trans,
I've been out at the crowd in the chat room for the last 6 years.
Sue's response was shaped by everything she believed, that this could be fixed, prayed away, controlled. But then something shifted. She went from advocating conversion therapy to denouncing it, from protesting pride to marching with her trans daughter, from holding signs that said homosexuality is a sin to signs that now say trans lives matter. And through it all, her family grew alongside her. Here's Sue's story.
My name is Sue, and I've changed my mind about faith, politics, and unconditional love.
Can you just share with me a little bit about what values you were raised with and what your background is?
As a family, we were very involved in the church. At the age of 18, had a born-again experience. That was kind of my introduction to the conservative evangelical church, and that's where I met my husband, and we had 3 children, 2 girls and a transgender daughter. At the time, we perceived as a boy. In this church, all the families homeschooled. Our kids were homeschooled for 20 years. I guess we believed that if they went to the public schools, they would probably be indoctrinated. So 24/7, they were very immersed in the conservative Christian worldview.
How did your religious views impact how you viewed gender and sexuality at the time?
We were told that it was a sin, that people could go through conversion therapy and pray away the gay. And so we bought into all that. In fact, when I got involved in this very conservative church, we actually went to a pride festival and I protested. When Styx was 10, she told us she was gay. I was shocked. We thought that that's not part of God's plan. I thought, how does she even know what that word is, let alone what it means? Apparently, she'd heard it from one of her peers in church and somehow resonated with her. She was sensing at that age that she was different. In the beginning, we didn't think we could tell anybody because I was afraid that if anybody knew or thought that Styx was gay, that they wouldn't want Styx to play with them. And so I was pretty certain that we would be shunned. I even remember going through a period where I told my husband, let's go to church late and leave early because if I start talking to somebody, I'm going to start crying. So we did find a Christian ministry that was geared for families that had children struggling with being gay. At that time, our son also started conversion therapy with the leader of the ministry. We were hopeful that the conversion therapy that she did would change her. And like I said, as a teenager, she was striving and praying that these feelings would go away. Her teenage years were filled with a lot of anxiety and depression.
And then I know Styx came out later as trans. What was that second coming out like for you?
When she was 18, she came out as openly gay, and then when she was 25, she came out as trans and changed her name to Styx and female pronouns. That was a real pivotal point. My middle daughter came to my husband and I, and she said, Mom and Dad, you've got to get your act together. You're going to lose Styx. You're either going to lose her to suicide or you're going to lose your relationship with her. So as you can imagine, that was a big wake-up call as well as a motivator to start examining our belief systems. Also, I had some challenging conversations with Styx, and to her credit, she hung in there with me because I know some of them were painful for her. I said, are you sure you're not just getting on the latest trend? And she said, no, Mom. This is always who I've been. I just never had the right word for it.
I stand before you today as a proud trans woman. I will tell you that being trans is the hardest thing that I've ever done. It is painful at every turn, socially, physically, mentally, and medically, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. It is beautiful to learn to love yourself, past, present, and future, in all forms and iterations. It is a religious experience for me personally.
I know we chatted just about your faith and about how this shift in perspective was like the catalyst in allowing you to sort of unpack and think about your faith in a different way. Can you talk about that a little bit, about what that transformation was like?
In the evangelical church, we even had this saying, God said it, I believe it, and that settles it. So we were never encouraged to ask questions or use critical thinking skills. They give you this imaginary box and they say all the answers are inside this box and God's inside this box. And don't look outside the box or you're going to get led astray. So for the first time after 40 some years of holding on to a very rigid belief system, I started having the courage to look outside that box for answers. I asked questions, I applied critical thinking skills, listened to other people's perspectives. I read books and materials that challenged me. I listened to LGBTQ plus Christians, and I came up to the conclusion it's not a sin to be a homosexual. So that was a real big breakthrough for me. I've really come to believe that people that are involved in the LGBTQ plus community were created that way by God, and they just need to be honored and respected and even celebrated.
And I know that your family was instrumental in this major shift. Can you kind of just talk about what family means to you and how you arrived at that place together?
My 2 older daughters, obviously they were raised with that very rigid belief system, but they had started asking questions outside that box and doing some hard work on their own. And so they were continually having dialogue with us, challenging us to think through how our belief system was impacting our daughter, Styx, as well as our relationship as a family. Like I said, I was very resistant, but I knew we had to make changes. And I realized that Styx was not going to be the one that was changing because she really felt like this was the way that she was created. So my husband and I were the ones that needed to make those changes. I'm very thankful that I did have our 2 daughters as well as Styx. In one sense, our relationship is deeper because we are able to talk about difficult topics, so we really are growing as a family, and I think our love for one another is deeper because we listen to each other and we respect each other's perspectives.
How has your relationship with Styx evolved over time as you've grown?
When she came out as openly gay at 18, that was a big challenge. She had a very guarded relationship with us. Also around that time, she started performing in drag, and that was a very big challenge for me. I had a lot of negative stereotypes about the drag world and drag queens. I was pretty repulsed by it. The same daughter who had told us we needed to get our act together, we might lose Styx, she also said, Mom and Dad, I hope you can get to the point where you not only unconditionally love Styx, but you celebrate who she is. I'm just pleased to say, after a lot of hard work, that my husband and I are to that point that we celebrate who our daughter is, and we're trying to advocate for her and for the trans community, and we enjoy going to her drag shows. Interestingly enough, the name that she chose was Sticks and Stones, and you know, there's that little saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me, and I think that was a way of her trying to reclaim some of the pain that she had experienced as a teenager.
And what does it feel like when you're watching her on stage and performing?
Well, she's just very brilliant at what she does. She makes her own costumes. She is very good with the hair and the makeup, and it really is just an art form. And I really enjoy going to drag performances, and they're just a lot of fun.
What does it feel like when you hear drag discussed and sort of speaking to those stereotypes and the fear?
You know, as a parent, I just feel just heartsick on how trans people are being treated, and also people that want to express themselves to do drag. It's been around for centuries, as well as trans people being around for centuries. So it's just a shame that it's become so politicized.
What would you share with a parent who's in that same space of fear right now?
We need to just set aside any political noise. And if you've been handed that kind of imaginary box, whether that's because of your faith or whether it's because of the family values that you grew up in, it's just important to have the courage to look outside that box. It comes down to we need to be in our kids' corner. We need to be loving them unconditionally. When I was involved in the evangelical church, they would tell you, well, don't argue the Bible, just tell your story, because nobody can argue against your story. And so I've kind of embraced that now. We're just average people. We love our children. We're doing what's right for them. And when I just start telling my story, I find people are very empathetic and compassionate, and it can be almost like an aha moment for them.
You've undergone so much of a transformation around your identity and your politics and your faith. What do you think is the value of being able to change your mind?
I just think it's so important to be able to continue to grow. Your faith is pretty stagnant if all you're doing is just believing everything in that little box that you're told to believe. So I feel like it's really freeing to be able to ask questions and read books that challenge you or materials that challenge you, listen to other people's perspectives. And what my faith is now is not going to look the same way as it does now 10 or 15 years from now. And I think that's a good thing.
I'm proud to be part of a legacy of human beings who have learned to make magic of our bodies, to make visions into a reality. That is what pride is to me.
I know you are celebrating Styx now, and I'm just curious, what makes Styx special? What's your relationship like with her? Just a little bit about the richness of the relationship that you share.
Yeah, Styx is... when she was making her costumes and she was living with us, there was always glitter everywhere. And I said to her one time, I said, you bring color into my life. And she really does. She's a very special person.